Welcome to Leadership Rules, where we believe leadership isn't just a role, it's a way of life. Whether you're leading a team, a community, or simply leading yourself, we're here to help you unlock the rules to lead your life with purpose and impact. I'm Nick Caniglio with Marnie Stockman. We are the co-authors of the book, Lead It Like Lasso, and we're excited to chat today. Welcome to our podcast.
Today's guest, we're super excited, is Billy Brimblecom Jr. Billy is the executive director of Steps of Faith Foundation. It's a nonprofit dedicated to providing prosthetic care for amputees who do not have insurance that will cover it. He's also the mastermind behind Thundergong, woohoo! A benefit concert that features performances by various artists and celebrities to raise funds for Steps of Faith. His leadership is marked by creativity, dedication, resilience, and a deep commitment to making a tangible difference in the lives of others. So excited. So yay, Billy Brimblecom. Thanks for joining. So we are super excited to have you here today. We love to jump off our podcast with some biscuits with the boss, because that's a good team building bonding activity that we can all appreciate. So in typical Ted Lasso fashion, first concert, best concert. I feel like this is an extra good one for you as a former professional drummer.
Yeah, first concert I like to say is a two-parter, and a little bit of that is my pride speaking, but they were also very, very closely linked time-wise. So the first concert that I remember seeing as a kid was Ronnie Millsap,
okay,
80s country star. At Worlds of Fun, which is a theme park, like a roller coaster theme park here that has a little mini amphitheater in it. But then shortly thereafter, I need to get with my aunt. I've told the story so many times. I need to find out what year that was. Oh no, I actually looked this up. This is going great. Early 80s. But then right after that, I think it was 83. But then right after that, I saw the Jacksons Victory Tour.
Oh,
nice. There was no Thriller tour. Oddly enough, for the biggest selling album of all time. But shortly thereafter, there was the Jacksons Victory Tour, which actually opened in Kansas City 3 nights. My dad went 2 of them. One of them was with me. So two-parter for first concert. And best concert, I still think my favorite concert of all time was I saw with Jason and our friend Corey. We saw Foo Fighters summer of '97. In St. Louis, and it was early on in the beginning of the Color and the Shape tours. The second Foo Fighters album, Supergrass, opened. I love Supergrass so much. Yeah, that's my favorite, best show I've ever seen. Sure.
Nice. Fantastic. I'm confident that after November 9th, I'm going to say Thundergong 2024. As I answer to that.
I am too.
Yes, we're looking forward to that. We're going to get more into that later. But rapid fire, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Nice. Ice,
there is ice in this, but I'm a cold brew. Cold brew with a shot of espresso in it. Yeah.
Nice.
Fizzy water, sip it or spit it?
I sip it. I sip it.
Okay, you'll take it
personally. Right. Yeah.
All right. Dog or cat?
Dog.
Nice.
Do you have one?
Not yet. My wife and I both had dogs growing up. We're dog people. Our kids have been wearing us down, and we put the deposit down. And we're right after Thundergong. The timing works out. Here in a month, we're getting a puppy. Yeah.
Okay. Any particular kind you're getting? Do you know, or
a little bitty thing? It's a puppy now, but it's I believe it is a Maltipoo.
Oh,
okay. So it's, crossbred, genetically modified little animal. Yeah, that's all. I don't know much about it other than that.
No, I think that's perfect. So one more that turns into a longer question: leadership, nature or nurture?
That is a longer answer. I think that if we look at Moses.
Kicking it back.
No, I think it's both. I think that, and I kind of think of everything through the frame of music. You know what I mean? It's like there are people who are born with just insane talent, as a musician or leader. There is a predisposition, but I also think that there are some people who are born with, say, less predisposition and less just like God-given talent, that you can just work your tail off and really make it happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, what making it happen looks like is subjective. That's, you know, that doesn't really matter. But I think that, yeah, people who wouldn't think, oh yeah, I am a leader. You know, I mean, I joke about Moses, but it's actually true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Story, you know, it's like I have this impediment. What am I going to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So his whole thing, you know, no matter what you believe, it's a good story on leadership. Long one, but good one.
Yes. Yeah.
Some supernatural in there, but yeah, no, I think it's both. You know what I mean? I think it's both. I mean, you've seen people who are not the person, you know, not the most likely to succeed when they're 16, 17, 18 in the yearbook, you know, and then end up totally ruling, you know, in a great way. So, yeah.
Well, I say to that, if you have a chip on your shoulder, use it to bet on yourself. And so I think that's what happens to some of those not most likely to succeed.
So, yeah, absolutely.
So we want to use that to transition into chatting about your vision and mission for Steps of Faith charity. And I heard you on one podcast say, like, improving mobility and possibility for uninsured amputees. So would love to hear whatever you want to tell us about the story about, you know, sort of the creation of Steps of Faith Foundation, your inspiration for the journey, etc.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, yeah, there's many different sizes versions of the story, but I'd say that the somewhat compact one would be the 2013. I was living in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm from Kansas City. That's where I am right now. And my wife and I lived in Nashville for 7 years. And so 2013, we had a brand new baby. My wife was a teacher with no paid maternity in Tennessee.
Oh.
Our baby came 6 weeks early. I had moved there in hopes to mostly make a living in the recording studio, which is kind of, you know, business hours, traditional business hours, usually, especially in Nashville, which is a real music industry city.
Yeah, it is.
But most of my work up to that point had been touring on the road as like a sideman for hire kind of thing, which was great, but you're gone all the time. So anyway, how it came to be Steps of Faith is I had kind of was like, I didn't, you know, it was hard enough being away from my wife for 3 to 6 weeks at a time. You know, throw a new baby in the mix. I didn't want to leave the house, let alone leave the city. And so I was really kind of like thinking of like, even temporarily, I might have to get like a new job, and not like a, you know, a pizza route, you know what I mean? But paper route. Is a pizza route a thing?
You know what?
We were following you. Yeah.
There might be a business opportunity.
It is now. You're getting it no matter what. If you're one of my stops, you're getting a pizza. Okay. Trademark.
That's what I was going to say. Like, you own this one.
So long story short, one day I had an appointment with my prosthetist. You can look that word up. Prosthetist. That's the leg. The doctor, prosthetic specialist. And on my way out, he was like, I have the guy I'm seeing after you. He lost his leg to cancer like you, and I'm starting to fit him today. You want to pop in the room with me and talk to him for a sec? I think he could benefit from seeing somebody, you know, several years down the road doing great like you. And I was like, oh, I would love to do that. I feel like that's part of why this happened to me, and I never get to have these kind of conversations. And so I rarely have these kind of conversations. And so I walked in and I talked to the guy, and it was a really heightened time in my life, brand new baby, looking, what am I going to do with my life? You know, all of these things. And I could just see the hope in his eyes and the excitement and all that. And I left there saying, I wish that could be my job. And again, long story short, I told my prosthetist that the next day because I had another appointment. He said, maybe it could be. He introduced me then to the guy that was his boss that owned the company. Rob Pittman is an important character in the story of Steps of Faith. And it turns out that Rob had established the 501c3. So for those that don't know, a nonprofit is very much a business, just like any other business. It just has a different tax denomination. And when you give your money to a for-profit business, they give you the thing they do. When you give your money to a charity like Steps of Faith, we give something to someone else. In this case, we get a prosthetic limb to someone else.
Yeah.
And so Rob had established a 501c3, but it was a dormant tax exempt idea. So he and I had a couple conversations. And then so eventually after conversation number 2, he was like, what if you come on and run this nonprofit I've been trying to get off the ground? So I always say that was the day he tossed me the keys to a car with no engine in it and said, "Do that." And 11, almost 12 years later, and going on a couple thousand people at this point, all over the country, we're still going. So origin story, the mission of Steps of Faith, yes, is to get prosthetic limbs for amputees that have no health insurance or no prosthetic coverage. So Medicaid in a handful of states, that's health insurance, does not cover prosthetic care for adults. So I was in Texas last week. Texas is a large state.
Yeah.
That's the Medicaid rule in Texas. So we help a ton of people in Texas. We help people all over the country. So a lot of people are like, insurance doesn't cover that. And it's like, well, sometimes they don't. And a lot of people, by the way, if you haven't looked around, this is one of the, before politics became a crazy cult-like sport that people fought over and, families were ripped apart. It was one of the basic things we've always argued about and trying to get right, because health care, quote fingers, because it's a misnomer, there's no care, in the United States is a giant mess because of the people that hike up drug prices and health insurance companies. Yeah. Steps of Faith should not need to exist in the United States of America in particular, but unfortunately we do. 500 people lose a limb every day just in the United States.
Wow.
And a lot of those people, they've got Medicaid in a state that doesn't cover prosthetic care, or they can't afford health insurance, things like that. So long answer to a short question, but that's how Steps of Faith came to be. And that's what we do is we are restoring mobility and possibilities for people when they have no other place to turn.
Yeah.
Wow.
Love that.
How many states, I'm curious, I wasn't aware of that. How many states don't cover the prosthetic care? Is it a large majority of the states
It's a handful, and I'm embarrassed to say, as much as I have to talk about this, every time this question comes up in like a public setting like this, I'm like, I really need to have the list of this. I had actually asked the Amputee Coalition, so I'm going to blame them. They were supposed to give me a list.
They got to get back to you on that.
But there's at least 5 that I know of. So it's, Kansas and Missouri. I'm in Kansas City. So it's on the border of 2 states.
Yeah.
It's not an issue here in this area, which is great. But Texas is the biggest one, just because it's literally geographically the biggest state where that's an issue. So
Okay. All right. So Thundergong is coming up in just a couple of weeks. We're excited. We're going. First time that we're going to go, and it's become such a high energy, really impactful event. And I imagine when you were handed the keys to this car without an engine, you were thinking, oh my God, okay, what am I going to do? And I imagine Thundergong was, the thought, the beginnings of it. I'm sure it wasn't what you envisioned, what it ultimately has become today. But what was your original vision for it when it started? And has it evolved the way you think way you thought it was going to evolve over time?
The original vision for Thundergong?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The nucleus of the idea was in place upon getting the job in 2013. And by that, I mean, in 2006, spring of 2006, I'd lost my leg to cancer, Ewing's sarcoma, for all those sarcoma heads out there, all those cancer heads out there. There's a Reddit sub thread for everything, right?
Yeah.
But any of you medical residents out there, anyway, no, I lost my leg to cancer in 2005, and then had a basic prosthetic leg that I learned to walk with, and finished chemo and my treatment in December of that year. Anyway, 2006, I was getting the permanent prosthetic leg. And by the way, it's not the permanent one, it's the permanent type. I still have that type, but it's several legs later. And at the time, my insurance was not going to cover all of it. And it's a very expensive prosthesis, $60,000. And I'd like to point out, this is not a I can drive a Honda but choose a Ferrari.
Yeah.
None of that applies to prosthetic limbs. There's a lot of different kinds of prosthetic limbs because there's a lot of different kinds of real limbs and real people and real bodies. And that is the thing then and now that is appropriate for my body. Medical folks, health insurance are never going to argue over needing a knee replacement.
Yeah.
I have a knee replacement. It's just on the outside.
Yeah.
So there was a fundraiser in 2006 that ultimately my friend Corey that I mentioned earlier that went with Jason and I to the Foo Fighters show in 1997. He and his wife put together here in Kansas City to raise $30,000 for me. It was Corey and his wife, Monique, our great friend, Ed Goodman, another comedy sports buddy, Jason Sudeikis, and his wife at the time, who has been involved with Steps of Faith since like year number 2, Kay Cannon, who's a brilliant screenwriter and filmmaker, director. And we raised a bunch of money for me. So anyway, there's a story within a story. When I got this job, I told Jason, hey, we raised $30,000 to pay for half of one leg for me. With this new job, if we raise $30,000, that's like more than 30 legs, all that kind of thing. So now that took many years, but I had this idea of some sort of music comedy type thing, just because those are the things that come most naturally to me and Jason, what I mean? Those are the things we grew up doing together, bonding over, and so I talked to him off and on, and then we did my band. I have this yacht rock band that I've had with my wife for 15 years called Summer Breeze. And we also have been the house band for Thundergong and play with everybody every year. We did this thing that was a fundraiser for Steps of Faith. This was December of 2016, and it was an Elton John tribute show. So it was all just like all the early, 70s and 80s Elton John classics that are written on the hearts of most of planet Earth. And we were the house band, and we had all of these guest singers and just friends from Kansas City in our area, but that are like just great, incredible singers. So at the end of the show, and it was right before Christmas. So a couple days before Christmas. So it's like emotions high, all of this. And at the end of the show, we're closing, playing Tiny Dancer, stage full of people. It's, everybody that had sang is all up there, And I just was really thankful and thoughtful and reflective and emotional about it the next day. And then I thought, how do I do something like that again? House band, big group of people as a fundraiser for Steps. And then I had thought, what if it was like really drummer based? They used to do this thing in Nashville called like Drummers Night or whatever. And there would be a house band, and then it was like Alex Van Halen's actual drum set. And there was all these like hotshot drummers from Nashville, and they're all just playing Van Halen songs all night. And it was like a fundraiser for something. I never went. Anyway, I'm almost done answering your question.
No, you're good.
I'm not good at many things, but the thing I'm best at, long answers to short questions.
We all have our skills.
But know your worth, know what you're good at. So so then I pitched the idea to Jason. It's like, what if we had this house band? There's like a bunch of drum sets on stage, and we got all these guest drummers, knowing between the two of us, we know, we have friends that are, very, high profile drummers. I was specifically thinking of Dave Grohl, because I was like, and then Dave could also like sing, not just play drums and all this, on a couple songs. And that was the idea. We toyed with it all year. And then he, at one point, this would have been July, I remember, of 2017, because we had been like, okay, let's look like, Foo Fighters are coming through Kansas City with a day off in Kansas City. At least we were guessing by looking at their itinerary. We're playing like Wichita and Tulsa, and it was a Sunday night, the night everybody wants to go out for it. But that was the night Jason called, and he was like, all right, I just got off the phone with Taylor Hawkins, God rest his soul, Foo Fighters drummer. They were about to go on stage in like Rio or something like that. And he was like, they're 75% in. He's going to talk to Dave. You're going to get a hold of Stuart Copeland from the Police. I was like, oh my God, it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
Get a venue. So really the event, to finally answer your question, early on was going to be this drummer related thing. And it still is, but Foo Foo Fighters were able to make that one.
I was
But
going to
the
ask
first-
that. Yeah.
They were never able to make that one. We did get them. They made a video for us in a virtual show we did in 2020, which looks like an actual music video. And they did make that for us. It was a song Jason requested. But the next people he called were Will Forte, Fred Armisen. And that immediately changed it. Fred's a drummer. Fred's also a guitar player. Fred is known as being an actor and a musician, but it immediately was like, oh, okay. Well, I knew those guys a little bit at the time, from just, being friends with Jason for so many years and seeing them in New York and stuff. So yeah, it was like, okay, that immediately kind of shifted it from just like a drummer thing to something that's way better, where it's like musicians, funny people. Yes, there's a house band. And it's just this rock and roll variety show.
Yeah. That's awesome. A couple of things that you brought up, just given your backstory, filling us in on that. So you mentioned that you're permanent prosthetic, right? You're on your third one at this point.
I'm more than that in it now. I don't even know.
So you mentioned a couple things, right? So, every day 500 people, lose a limb, right? You've mentioned the fact that, insurance really doesn't cover this in a lot of different areas. And then not only do you have to get the prosthetic, right? But then, you're going to need another one and another one and another one, another one. I mean, I think it really highlights to the people that are listening, right, how important this mission and vision of your organization is, because clearly this is not a cheap endeavor, right? You didn't ask to lose a limb, right? Obviously you have no control over it. And the fact that you have relatively little places to turn, I think speaks to what an unbelievable job that your organization does in raising awareness of this issue and raising the money for it. I think it's a really big deal. So
I appreciate
that's awesome.
It's like, yes, thank you. It's also, I can't dwell on this too much because it's like I alone cannot fix it, but I talk about it whenever I can. It's like, and also all of that, it's just ridiculous that, again, we should have to even
that you even have to do it in the first place.
This shouldn't be a thing, It's like we can see what comments I get from this. I'm always like hesitant to talk about this as an example. Like I use the knee replacement example. Mm-hmm. I'm hesitant to talk about this because I'm a man and it's not whatever. And I'm not saying one is more important than the other, but like a knee replacement that you don't have to ever fight for. It's my understanding, knowing about medical things and cancer and that kind of thing, that if, say, a woman has breast cancer and there is a mastectomy, it's also kind of unless you choose otherwise, often part of the recovery process to have reconstructive surgery. Yeah. And it's not like, well, that we need a nonprofit to raise money for.
Right, mm-hmm. Right.
And I'm not saying that's unimportant. I'm not comparing. I'm using it as an example. Yeah. Like there's a bizarre disconnect.
Yeah.
Well, we don't think walking is important. Right. Yeah. We're having access to all four of your limbs. It's really bizarre that there's this strange disconnect when it comes to that. And it's infuriating to me. Yeah. And that's the part that I can't dwell on too much, enter cliche here. You can't eat the whole elephant all at once, whatever. Because it's just like, yeah. So when I kind of look up and think about it too hard, it's ridiculous. But yeah, unfortunately, we are a necessary thing for people in this country.
That is quite a story. So
that's not out of line for me to use that example.
No, okay. I mean, I think the more people can connect their own stories, right, or with story, because amputee is a very specific, special type of scenario that if you haven't lived it, you don't understand. Sure. And I've never even heard of, like, I remember the first time I listened to you and heard that it isn't the military that, I mean, I assumed that the majority of amputations happen because of injuries from the military. And you're like, no, it's like 8% or so. I don't remember the number.
Less than 1%.
Oh, less than 1%, wow. Right?
So 500 a day, every day in the United States.
And so fewer than 5?
And since 9/11, so modern warfare, since 9/11, 2001, I'd like to remind folks it's 2024. 1,558 combat amputations.
Oh, which is 3 to 2.5 days worth of.
Exactly. Oh. Yes. So that's not a negative comment about the military. That's a good thing, folks. So, but it's just we shine a very bright light on the military in the United States.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nonprofits that help veterans with a lot of things, thankfully, because I can't imagine.
Oh, yeah.
But two things: we don't help any veterans because we're not asked, because the number is so low, and also if you are one of those 1,558 people. And that number has maybe risen a little in the last 2 years or whatever. The paying for the prosthetic limb is covered by the government.
It's covered by the government.
So,
I think you would hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. There's another piece that you mentioned in there, and you laughed, but also I'm commenting on, like, you could have definitely done stand-up comedy with your parenthetical. I feel like you could be a writer for any of these shows.
Well, that's how Jason and I met. You know, we doing improv comedy together. So
I don't know how I missed that, but I was like, yeah, for sure. I can see the connection there. You said, like, okay, you got to know your worth, know your strengths, know your core values and who you are. And I have heard you say that you have the soul of a drummer, even as the leader of a nonprofit. So I'm super curious what that means to have the soul of a drummer in a business.
Yeah. Well, to be clear, that is a Ringo. I'm pulling from a quote from Ringo Starr.
Seems like a reasonable person to pull up.
Yes.
Well,
so I'd have to look up the exact quote of what he said, but it resonates with me very, very deeply. It's like my soul is that of a drummer. So yeah, how that relates to, you know, it still is kind of like who I am, you know what I mean? I'm more than that, blah, 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 blah. But you know, when you, like, I was talking to a great friend of mine who's a lifelong friend, who's a board member. And she has been like in high level academia her whole career, you know. She's about 50 years old, still a very young woman, and she's getting out of that as a professor and an administrator and all of these things at high level universities. And she was like, and moving into a different career that's going to be good for her in this season of life. And she was like, it's kind of jarring because I feel like it wasn't until I'm looking at not doing this anymore that I realize how much my identity is wrapped up in that, you know? Mm-hmm. So all that to say, I'm not saying my identity is necessarily wrapped up in being a musician. I'm also saying it completely is. And that's a good thing for me. So yeah, Ringo was basically just talking about how he's wired and how he's made. And I will say the same thing. And how that applies to businesses. I said this earlier, you know, we were talking about leadership, you know, nature versus nurture. And I said, I look at everything through the lens of being a musician. It's just the way I am made and built. I've loved music since I can remember. And, you know, I played the drums since I was 11 years old. I'm 47. And so I really, you know, and did that full time on a good month, you know, until Steps of Faith fell from the sky into my lap, thanks to Rob Pittman in Nashville, Tennessee. And yes, to answer your question, it's I'm kind of doing the same thing. You know, for me, music is a collaborative effort. Now, you can sit and play drums by yourself. You can sit and you know, make a solo piano concert or album or guitar or whatever, and that's beautiful. But for me as a drummer, it's always way better. Like Ringo, I heard him say, even back to him the other day, it's like I learned to be a musician. And this also speaks to what he means by the quote, by playing with other people. He's like, I played by myself a couple times and it was boring, you know? And so I would not say that it's boring playing drums alone, but it's like infinitely better playing with one other human being in real time.
Yeah.
And that's been the case. That's how I started doing it with my friend Trent Ehlert in his basement when we were 11 years old. And so the way when you're in a band, you know, there's only like, you know, an hour or two a day where you're actually playing music if you're on tour or you have rehearsal that day, or, you know, if you're in the studio, maybe you're playing more, you know, but really it's not that much time. The rest of the time is just interacting and collaborating with a team.
Yeah.
And, you know, there usually needs to be at least an unspoken leader, a natural leader in that team or whatever. So really, I'm doing the same thing. I don't know if I'm answering the question. The way I view Steps of Faith, the way I naturally go about interacting with the people that I'm around that work with me, in my with my small staff. There's 4 of us total. And that we have a secondary team that is our Thundergong team that kind of works as like a de facto marketing agency for us year round. But this is the time of year where that's really intense, and we're working with those people all the time. It's just the same thing. It's a creative, collaborative endeavor for me, that I operate and behave and think the same way I've always thought in music. How we market it, how we talk to people, the kind of product we're trying to create, it's really just how I view everything, and it's worked. I don't know another way to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I went to college to study jazz drums. You know what I mean? I didn't graduate. And so it's like, it's all I know how to do. And so far that works, Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think we often say, and it kind of reinforces one of our, our basic tenets, which is how you do anything is how you do everything. And I think what you just described is, that collaborative environment from drummer and being part of a band, and how you apply that to the Steps of Faith organization. I think that's pretty darn cool. So thanks for sharing.
My job as a musician and my job as CEO of Steps of Faith are the same. It's connecting with people.
Yeah. That's,
you know what I mean? On stage and off. I'm really doing the same thing. Even playing drums, like
you're still connected.
The biggest, yes, like even with Steps of Faith, like the biggest fundraiser we do is Thundergong, where I play drums all night, So yeah, it's the same.
Awesome. You want to give just everybody quick? It's a couple of weeks away. Are you adding more people to the lineup
yes.
in a couple of weeks?
When does this air?
This will air next Wednesday, so you don't have to give any secrets away on this call for sure.
Okay. Yeah, it depends on when we can announce certain people. But yes, there are, as of this moment, there are 3 artists we haven't announced. I'm hoping there will be a 4th that we haven't announced. But yes.
Okay. Well, we can't wait to hear that. So we obviously talk, Billy, a lot about leadership, and the way we learn is hearing how people have kind of, share their stories and how they've learned, right? So just a question we ask a lot of folks that we talk to, if they can recall kind of a significant challenge that they've had, in pursuit of where they ultimately wanted to be. I mean, does anything come to mind in terms of a particular challenge that you had to kind of deal with that you haven't already brought up with this, of getting Steps of Faith to where it is today that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long list. I think particularly just the early days, just trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
it wasn't even as much, but it was also just like, I think in retrospect, as hard as it was, in some ways, I know that there was maybe a little bit of an advantage going into it, meaning it wasn't like I was handed the keys to build a nonprofit that maybe spoke to me, but I didn't know much about.
Yeah.
So I knew the deal with this, and so I've said this many times, but basically the first thing I did was just made a list and started calling everybody I knew and telling them, check out what just happened to me. Yeah. Because these were people who knew me. I'd lost my leg to cancer, which was terrible for anyone that knew me and cared about me, because that's awful. You know what I mean? For it to happen to anyone, losing a limb, is there's not a good version of that story, but you fall, it's how you get back up, blah, 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 blah. Right. And so, anyway, I called everybody I knew, and what that did was kind of, created the initial donor base that fortunately grew, but not tons and tons the first few years. So I think, in the early days, it was just figuring out how to, I guess you're right, figuring out how to make it work and all of the ways that make it work. It was less figuring out how are we going to do the thing we do, what Steps of Faith does as an organization is a very simple thing once you understand what that thing is.
Yeah.
You know, we give prosthetic limbs for folks that have no health insurance or no prosthetic coverage. We work directly with the clinics around the country in the city where that amputee lives. That clinic donates their time and they tell us the parts they need to put together the prosthetic arm or leg. And then we purchase those parts through one of the two largest, we have accounts with the two largest prosthetic distributors in the country, which is where a clinic would purchase the stuff from. And we purchase it at wholesale. So the donor's dollar goes really far. Simple as that. They tell us what we need. We buy the stuff. We ship it to them. Patients out the door, and hopefully they're going to get back to work and then get on some sort of insurance plan, that kind of thing. So, figuring out how to being able to say the Ringo quote and all that, that's all in hindsight. I mean, I know that that's how I'm wired, but I've just been doing the same thing is in hindsight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just so people, I understand that people trusted me out of the gate, that this was at least something that I was probably going to at least do my best to not screw up. And so therefore they'll give me their $25 or $25,000 or whatever the case may be. Yeah. Nobody was given $25,000 in the early days. But that's not true. A few people did. I was about to name some names, but yeah, so it's just like starting any business is hard.
Yeah. Do you ever doubt yourself? Did you ever?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And, I even have a lot this year, we're in a completely new phase, this like I said, this is year 11, we turned 11 years old in April. It's just a completely different phase than we were in 2013, of course. And so there's been times where I've just been doubted my decision-making or whatever, you know what I mean? This year, to put it simply,
it's just get past that. I mean, is it your support? Is it your wife, your family? I mean, is it just your resilience that, you've been dealt a bad hand in some respects, right? Mm-hmm. You've figured out a way to overcome it. Do you just lean on that to kind of get past that doubt?
A little bit, but it's also like being aware of the problem. You know what I mean? It's kind of knowing the enemy is there and where he is located. Mm-hmm. And then okay, I acknowledge that you're there. Now I'm going to walk on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of knowing the problem. That's half the battle. Yep. Go Joe, G.I. Joe. So that's part of it. We're getting a little bit into some counseling therapy moment here, but this year, and it's not like I've made bad decisions necessarily or whatever this year. By any means, but no, you named all of it. It's my wife, my therapist, friends, that kind of thing. I'm a big advice person, meaning I seek it all the time. You know what I mean? It's not that I just said I've questioned my decision-making this year. For the most part, my job, along with just doing this and talking to people, is just making decisions all day long, all day long. You know what I mean? And quickly. And, I know that I have the ability to, for the most part, and I have to do it 1,000 times more this time of year. But I have the ability to make decisions quickly that are usually the right decision, not always though. So yeah, it's just a matter of I remember the first year putting Thundergong together, and I was like, is this a thing? And I asked again for advice. I had decision fatigue.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life. And I was like, you decide. It was just me and Jim, my buddy Jim, we're all bandmates. He was my first full-time employee. And I just, so many things, I was like, you got to decide. It's not that I don't, he was like, you don't care? I was like, no, I very much care. I can't.
I just can't do it.
It doesn't work. That mechanism is gone bye-bye. So yeah. It's got to push through, you know what I mean? And this has been a particularly weird year for me. I'm alluding to that. There's no big, it's just been difficult, And so things have gone well. We've been bringing in money. We're helping more people than almost double the people all year. So that's also weird, but that's good weird,
It's good weird.
as of 2 days ago, we'd helped, our goal for this year is 300. That's December 31st, 300. We'd helped 365 2 days ago.
Nice.
It's gone up since then, 365 amputees around the country. So this year has just been like, hang on, man, So yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question. Yes, a lot of my wife, a lot of getting advice, a lot of like, oh yeah, I have to breathe.
Yeah, take a
deep breath.
So
it's interesting. I started out as a high school teacher, and I have read a study about teachers make something like hundreds of decisions every hour in front, like that fast paced. Okay, what is this going to do? And I wonder if one improv has. It's that like you got to make the decision and you got to make it the right decision quickly. That decision fatigue, all of the educators out there very much feel what you're feeling and why folks are exhausted all the time.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, my wife was an elementary teacher for 10 years. And so, yes, completely. It's very, very hard job. But yeah, no, the improv thing, definitely. I mean, yeah, doing that. When I was 18, I got hired at Comedy Sports, which is the Improv Comedy Club. That's where I met Jason, our buddy Corey, Ed Goodman, all those folks I talked about. And but I was also starting college, as I also mentioned, to study jazz music at the University of Kansas. So I realized again in retrospect that
all improv all the time.
All improv all the time. I was being trained to improvise over two different art forms.
Yep.
And I realized, again, hindsight, that really like changed the way I think and operate, as a person. So for the better.
I think it's good training for everyone, business, non-business, etc. We're, as you know, so we're super excited because we're sponsoring a happy hour before Thundergong to be able to, we've got some fundraising activities, some goofiness to go with, some shenanigans to sort of support Steps of Faith. But how else can folks support Steps of Faith?
Yes, thank you for asking, and thank you for doing that. Yeah, every year Thundergong gets a lot of attention, thank God. And so it kind of has always kind of functioned like just a campaign, a fundraising campaign for Steps of Faith, even outside of the, people buying tickets to the event or giving money at the event, we
were in the first 5 minutes, so we got one of the seats. So we're super excited.
I mean, you literally were. Yeah, it was crazy.
Let's go now.
I mean, the seats sold out in 5 minutes. Now it's only like 300 seats. And then the rest is all standing room. And the balcony, there's 600 seats in the balcony, but that's not sold publicly. That's all sponsorship, which is just anyway. But for future reference, I say that to the people that if we are to be at the Uptown Theater again next year, we'll see. But how can people help? Yes, that was the question. So yeah, it serves as a campaign. And then this year in particular, it's like it's been sold out for a couple months now. And we put all this time and effort to put together this really, really fun night and this crazy show, which is what I'm killing myself to try to do as we speak. But that's one night a year. Steps of Faith, 365 2 days ago, have helped an amputee every day.
Yep.
Well, more than that because the year's not over,
yeah.
right? So we are in the business of restoring mobility and possibilities to amputees all year round. So you can always just donate at stepsoffaithfoundation.org. The cliches about fundraising are true. We have people, there is a family that gives us over, let's just say, a lot of money every year and they break it up quarterly. There is someone in Indonesia that donates monthly. A lot of people donate monthly. And the amount of money they donate monthly is like $1.20.
That just pulls at your heartstrings.
Yes, it does. It affects me emotionally almost in the same, if not more intense way than the family that gives us a lot of money.
Because they're sacrificing and they've prioritized it as that important that they're willing to carve it out for you.
And it's significant to them. Yeah. And I feel like they need to know it's even more significant to me. So you don't have to wait until you get a raise to make a donation to something. If you feel moved, like at some point I'm not saying you got to do it now when you're listening, but I'm also like, if now is $5, we'll take it. It all goes in the same bank account.
Yeah.
We're a small team. making a big dent in something that we should not have to fight for, but we do all around the country every day, so that I can walk around like, a somewhat normal guy because I have access to the right tools. Steps of Faith is helping people that just simply don't have access to those tools. So really the best thing you can do is just donate online, any amount. If you are not coming to Thundergong, but you kind of want to get something other than a tax receipt and jewels in your crown in heaven for helping us. Very, very soon, if this is going, let's see, next week, about a week before the show, we should have all of our new Thundergong merchandise up on our website for a pre-order. About a month-long pre-order. So you would get it before Christmas. Lots of fun merchandise. I'm very excited about all that. And then we're also going to have bigger than ever a big online raffle and auction site where you can get all sorts of crazy things. Now, auction to the highest bidder. Raffle, you could spend $25 on a ticket and win the luxury watch or whatever. That's the fun thing about it. So yeah, there's kind of fun ways to get involved.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And all of that, you donate at stepsoffaithfoundation.org. The event Thundergong we have our own site just for the event, thundergong.org. They link to each other. All of that is on there. So yeah.
Wow. We're excited. Like I said, we're teaming up with Peanut Butter and Biscuits and, that podcast. We're going to meet them out there for the first time. So we're looking forward to it.
Cool.
Yeah. Billy, can't thank you enough for the time. We have in our book, we have these little Venn diagrams, and one of them is, people who can become extraordinary and people who already are. And I think just hearing your story and everything about the Steps of Foundation, you definitely check the box in that latter bucket. It's very cool, inspirational. Can't thank you enough for joining us, and we appreciate your time.
No, I really appreciate you asking. I mean, I was joking to one of my buddies on our team here, Dustin. I was like, yeah, okay, it was like right before I jumped, I realized I was like about to run late. And I was like, yeah, I'm about to do this. It's like a Ted Lasso universe related podcast. And he was like, another one? And so now that's not a knock. That's a testament to what Jason and Joe Kelly and Brendan Hunt created with that show and the amazing people involved. And so, buttering them up, credit where credit's due. But I'll also say it's like, you guys making what you've made, Peanut Butter Biscuits, all those guys, I think I've done 4 or 5 Lasso related different podcasts. So, I just want to say to you guys, like, I'm with you. You know what I mean? That's why I agreed to do this, because it's like your response to that show of being inspired to kind of use that to help other people, or even some of those folks just, talk about this really fun thing that's resonated with them.
Yeah.
That's amazing, And so, and almost everybody, there are some crazy people who get weird around famous people. Unfortunately, to those of you that are listening, they're just human beings. He's been my friend since I was 18 and he was 19. He's the same guy. He's just had a lot of success that's come his way, which is earned. Please don't be weird. But everybody else, I will say that all these podcasts, everybody that's run these, and you guys are no exception, and everybody that comes to our show, that donates to Steps of Faith beyond the show, which is even more important. Now, Ted Lasso, Jason, all those things might have been the thing that brought them there. That's the whole point. That was the whole point with Jason in 2017 when, the show was a twinkle in his eye, right? Yeah. So that's what we want to have happen. What I'm trying to say is I'm trying to affirm you guys and your listeners that, like, all of you folks that are kind of on this train, just know that I am on it with you. It is a good train to be on, and everybody is so kind and so cool. And I'm so thankful to all of the people that are kind of in this peripheral Ted Lasso universe for really doing what the show
is projecting,
which is just having this culture of kindness, believing in yourself, being nice, and I've really personally felt that, and It's a beautiful thing. I will also say, I'll leave you with this. It's 41 states and 7 countries, counting the United States, are going to be represented at Thundergong.
Oh, very nice.
41 out of 50 states, 7 countries. That's Ted Lasso, man.
That is, yeah.
You know,
That's the first person to sign up for our happy hour said, I'm bringing people from the UK. Can we come? I was like, fantastic.
I love it. That's just a really long way to say thank you, to you guys and the fans of your show and all of these shows. I'm sure if you're listening, you listen to many of them.
Yeah.
And it's all just beautiful, and I'm really thankful.
Well, thank you. Can't wait to see Thundergong. Maybe we get to meet you live at some point, or at least we'll shout from our seats.
Shout from your seats. I'll be the guy behind the drums.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thanks again, Billy.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.